COA State Aid Group. The agenda is we'll talk briefly about final grading, summer school, if that is going to occur in your district, physical education / school in the fall, and what about athletics? What's the conversation been on that? Mental health strategies for students and teachers. When we go back, and we will go back, how do teachers and how do students handle it? And I think the mental health issue will be an important issue. And budgets. I realize every single district in New York State is completely different. But I just want to get a sense of where we are with budgets. Now let me just go with some other items. The COA is sponsoring this webinar series. It's a 3-part series. The presenter will be Dr. Tyler Goad. He's from Emporia State University. I did some consulting with them, and then one thing led to another. Colleen is very good friends with Vicki Worrell, who heads the department there. And Vicki said, you know, she has this phenomenal instructor who does online physical education and really get students back and active. So I stepped up and said, COA would like to sponsor this series. I thought it was important for us to have service for our membership. So Colleen and I put together, and like I said earlier today, it already has over 238 people registered, and that's going to occur on June 8th, 9th, and 10th from 10 to 11 o'clock. So if you're a member, etc., please be part of that series. I think for our teachers across the state and for our directors across the state, it's very important to be a part of that.
So Murphy, were you able to put the link in the chat? Murphy, can you hear me?
I think
in there, Brian.
I
It's
put
in there,
the link.
right? The link to that is in there?
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you for doing that.
Great, thank you. Now the other, I had a call from Jim Rose and Jana Moran, and they'd like to develop a letter from COA to the state and to the governor about physical education in schools during COVID-19. So Jim and Janet, are you here? Are you on? And you can speak to that, and we can talk about. What we're gonna do is form a small subcommittee to compose the letter, and then when it's done, we'll send it obviously to state and to our governor. So if Jim Rose or Janet, are you on?
Sorry, hi, it's Jana. I'm here. I didn't see if Jim is here. So I think we had said after our last call that we thought it would be important to at least put together a letter with some type of guidance regarding the return to school and physical education as schools are starting to look at whether or not physical education will exist. We don't know if we're going to get some kind of, executive order that says it's going to be done a certain way. So I think we wanted to just ensure that our group has a voice in sharing what that could look like. And hopefully we're not too late in terms of getting something together. But I just quickly pulled together a Google document, which I can share with this whole group. I can put the link in the chat. And if there's a smaller group that wants to work on it together, that would be really great. And maybe we can get something together as early as, the end of this week.
So if you're interested,
Ron,
Janet, go ahead, Murphy.
I was just going to interject. I mean, we got those of us that are on the CAP committee from Daryl Daly will be meeting in June. So I can't imagine that the state education department has a plan for phys ed. I'm sure that they will be welcoming our input because the committee that's at the state ed that developed the standards, I think they're using that CAP committee as a voice. But we were supposed to meet today in Albany physically before this happened, but now we are rescheduled for June. So that might be an avenue to use as well for that committee that's already formed from that past work. So just a suggestion.
Great. Thank you.
Murphy, when you say CAP committee, what does that stand for? Do you mind? What does that mean?
I should know it by heart, but it's the Phys Ed Advisory Committee, just like ELA had one, science had one, math had one. It's
Okay.
the committee that oversees now physical education. They were moving forward after the standards have been approved and rolled out eventually for the future to have one for health too, but they're not there yet. So.
Okay, thank you.
If you are interested in being on a subcommittee to compose this letter, you can send an email to Jenna or myself. And if you could do that today, then we'll form that committee. And like I think Jenna said, we want to move on this quickly. Am I clear on that one? Good. The final thing before we get to all the zones, I'm working with a committee from New York State. It's called the Brain Injury Association of New York State. And the long and short of it, we're trying to develop a protocol for return to play in physical education or return to learn. I think we all know that the return to play has worked out well with interscholastic athletics. What we're trying to do is develop something that is very similar for physical education. When I'm on this committee, when I speak to all the different districts, everybody is doing something different. So we're trying to come up with a protocol using some of the strands from return to play, but for return to physical education. I'll have something in the COA newsletter either this week or early next week describing it, and this letter will come from Dr. Riegler, who is on this committee. So just letting you know and informing you of what is occurring. Okay, let's get to the heart of the meeting. Anyone from Zone 11? We're going to start with 11.
Yeah, we have two people on, and myself and Matt DiVincenzo, and I'm Bob Panarello.
Hey guys,
Hey, go-
new button. Yep, Matt DiVincenzo, section 11.
So talk to us about grading, summer school, phys ed, mental health, budgets, anything you want to talk about or concerns you have.
All right, I'll start, Matt, and then I'll speak briefly. Grading obviously has been, what hasn't been as much of a challenge as they thought for the fourth marking period. We ended last day of school was, I believe, March 13th that they allowed us in down here, and so they did have a third quarter grade, which ended the week after. So they averaged your third quarter grade. Fourth quarter, they gave us an option really for a no harm system for the pretty much for every surrounding district. They did a no harm policy, which meant you could either get a pass for your grade or a no grade, and then your third marking period would count twice. We do keep a numerical grade consistently for obviously class ranks, class averages. The distance learning has been pretty significant. Our entire district is on Google Classrooms, including our physical education department. So everybody got a Google Classroom code, and every kid has been on a Google Classroom. We developed an app for our school, a physical education app, K through 12, that Dr. Jim Wright helped us establish and put that together. So shout out to Jim. We had as of last week, we had over 9,000 hits on it for our students to do the lessons that are on there. And again, the lessons are K to 12. They then go into the Google Classroom and document what they've been doing, comment on the activities. And so every kid physical education is receiving a grade, and every kid, has been active. We have different challenges down here, but the dynamics of the social, not social emotional, the our economic pieces. We have the have and have-nots. We have kids that live on the water and have, $2 million homes, and we have kids that are getting free and reduced lunch, living on a different area of town. So we have a great dynamic. The use of getting kids to have Wi-Fi, computers in some houses and support is not as great as others. So that's a challenge for our district down here. But we also have, a good support system in our school. Social emotional learning has been a part of our lessons since we left. And we think that that's probably going to be the key to our program moving forward into September. That's going to be a key piece on how we get the kids back into the building and how we make sure that phys ed is not minimized from what we're doing. And the biggest, call to order that we've had down here is since we started, we wanted our phys ed staff is very strong, and we have a lot of great support. We wanted to be visible, not invisible during this whole pandemic. So we've been trying to be out in front and doing a lot of things with our phys ed department and, putting it on Twitter, putting it on all the school websites. So we seem to be a little bit more in the forefront because it's a little more enticing to the younger kids and the math, sitting down doing math all day. We give them some great activities and to do with their parents. So we think we got a pretty good handle on it, but it's still a challenge.
Yeah, I will echo most of what Bobby said. Same in my school district. So grades, it's a district-wide policy, and across the board on Long Island, especially in Suffolk County, it's pretty similar. Fourth quarter grades were not going to pretty much affect any kid, any student. They pretty much average the top, the first 3 quarters, and then fourth quarter, at least in my district, would only help a student in all of their courses. So what we have found is originally when this first started out, we were a little bit ahead of the curve as far as Google goes. Teachers already had Google Classrooms. A lot of our teachers were trained in Google. This went back from a couple of years. So we felt like a little ahead of the curve. But in my department, in phys ed and health, especially phys ed, they didn't, with the exception of one of my teachers, really weren't very comfortable, or at least didn't have any experience in Google Classrooms. They're all on board now. The only students or teachers that are not using Google Classroom in our district is the K through 2 teachers, and they are using a shared Google Drive. Works out pretty well for phys ed. Every week it gets updated. They put videos on it and activities. So it's worked out well. There's been some discussion about a program called Seesaw for the younger classes next year, not knowing what we're going to do in September. But either everyone will be doing Google Classroom and, the K through 2 teachers might be doing Seesaw. So that's worked out well. And then we saw like a big increase, like Bob was saying, where we had probably in the 90% participation, which went really well. We, from the beginning, set up a Google Doc activity log. So students across the board, K through 12, were submitting submitting their log because we felt like that was important, and got some good feedback from that. Like everyone else, I think we're starting to see the numbers decrease a little bit, especially, knowing that the fourth quarter is only going to help them. Your good students are still participating and working hard. So we've seen a little bit of a drop off, but all in all, it's gone pretty well. I agree with Bob as far as the social emotional learning piece. That's huge for us. We need to really come up with some more ways how we're going to work that in, especially not knowing what September's going to bring. All in all, it's been good. Communication's been huge. I probably, honestly, and I guess a little embarrassed to say, I've spoken more or had more communication with my phys ed and health staff than ever now, especially since athletic has been put on a shelf. Most of us have, we're athletic, phys ed, and health. And unfortunately, sometimes athletics consume us 99% of our job. And, so the one thing is the communication between my staff and I has really increased. We meet once a week minimal on a Google. We use Google Meet. We haven't done Zoom yet, but we're bringing it into the district. And, I set up a Google Doc, which I recommend for everybody, where I share it with all my staff. elementary, middle school, and high school. And, if something pops up and they want to talk about it, then they just log in for that day and kind of give their comments, and I do too. And then when we meet on Fridays, we kind of revisit everything that went on during the week. So it's been good. I think all of us here on the island are anxious about September. We're all nervous about it. We're not really sure what's going to happen, but, we have to be prepared. So that's kind of where we're at.
Quick question for you, and I would ask all sections this question, and it kind of ties into the next step for Ron. Have you guys begun to talk about specific strategies for September in terms of what phys ed would look like? I'd be interested in hearing that from every section. If anybody's really gotten into that conversation yet in terms of specific strategies.
I'll talk real quick since I just spoke, but I will say my last meeting I had was last Friday. That was the topic. We didn't really get into depth. We just said, guys, we need to start talking about what phys ed might look like next year. Let's be realistic about this and start at least having the conversation. So other than some conversations and other than me mentioning it, no, we haven't dove into it yet, but I'm anxious about that.
Hello, everyone. This is Dave Vegas from Section 8. In my district, we've already planning for Superintendent's Conference Day. We're planning two pathways. One is for in-person, and then the second one is what our staff needs for continuing virtual or long-distance learning. And we have to have that in by, I want to say the first week in June. So everything will be written down in pencil, as we like to say, with two pathways for what our staff is. So we're collecting data now from our phys ed and health staff, what they need to move forward for September, where there's gaps in instruction for them, gaps in learning for their students. And as the other gentleman was saying, we're using all the similar platforms and looking at other ways to provide instruction for whatever that may look like for us in September.
You muted, Ron.
Go ahead.
I'll jump in. We've been following the same procedures we have since we went out. Grading is the same. Although we've been delivering the content the same that we've all spring. Our last day of class is June 5th, and we also are planning on having a professional development week after that, and we're planning on looking at how we're going to deliver content both virtually and if we have real-time classes for at least part of our population. We also have a very active health and wellness group that has been delivering workshops on mental health. We had a
Nice.
come in, do one last week on stress and anxiety from Cleveland. And just through our advisory program, our advisors have had a lot of contact with our kids and our mental health people. So that's kind of been a strength, I think, for us. Other than that, so pretty much the same.
Thanks, Al. Good. Anyone else? Zone 10?
So you're going to be ending school for students as soon as June 5th. Our superintendent told us we have to wait till the governor decides when he thinks that school will be over. That's interesting.
Murphy, same with us. We're ending June 12th. And part of that was because during the online instruction, our teachers worked spring break. So they backed it up a week. So we might even end even before that. So it changed in our district too.
Yeah, we did too, but she's thinking that she might take us all the way to graduation. So that it's so interesting how different it is. But I think that
June 5th would have been our last day of classes anyway. And graduation normally would have been the following Saturday. They're not holding graduation till August, but that's pretty much the regular timeline we would have followed for our school year anyway.
Al, doesn't it mean, doesn't it have, you are private school too, so that probably plays a role in that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
We're ending on June 16th.
We're ending June 16th as well.
So it's interesting to individual school districts, their autonomy to end and what's coming out from the state. Just interesting stuff, to be honest with you. Anybody else? Zone 10, we'll go to zone 9. How about zone 8?
Hey, everyone. I can pretty much mirror what section 11 said. We're reverse in terms of grading. We gave pass fail for third quarter, and for fourth quarter, there were 10 assignments. Everything was worth 10 points. And that's how across the board, the middle school and the high school are grading. Elementary, we decided to revamp the current report card, if you want to call it, where only the classroom teacher is going to do a narrative and none of the specials are going to comment. And everybody was okay with that. We have not discussed budget at all. We have not discussed September at all. We are in transition of retiring a 33 or 36 year superintendent and getting in a new superintendent. So I'm guessing that's maybe some of the gap of communication in terms of September. I think we're also in Disneyland here where we're just not facing what we need to face at this point. We have not discussed staffing. We haven't discussed anything, where normally we're pretty much set already on staffing and everything else. So we're kind of going blind. We are voting on the budget that was determined way before any of this happened. So I find that quite interesting. We are not talking about cutbacks on anything, smaller class, nothing, no conversation. So that's interesting. We have, again, similar to section 11, our K through 3 is seesaw. We being the district, finally got the specials up and running. We thought we were going to be able to do a link where the phys ed teachers and the specials would each have their own link on the seesaw account, but somehow we are having a problem doing that, a tech glitch, from what I understand. So for every time we try to implement something really good, we get told to be pulled back because it's the classroom teachers are aggravated that we don't have our own site, et cetera, and so on. So we take 3 steps forward, 12 steps back in terms of K through 3. And sadly enough, we don't even teach kindergarten here. So probably shouldn't have said that out loud, but I adopted that one. So in 4 and 5, I should say 4 up, everybody has Google Classroom. We've been working on education lessons now, where we started off with just, in terms of elementary, we started off with just paper copies of physical education, like fitness logs. Now we've gone to the PE app, K through 12, and journaling and activity logs still. So we're now going to throw in, if we come back in September and we're still remote learning, then we'll increase the education lessons probably. Well, I think they still only want us to do 1 a week for every other day classes, but we'll have new lessons every week. So that's how we continue. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm having all of the teachers create a bank of lessons while they're home presently. So this way, if we need to get up and running in September, we're going to be up and running in September. I would still say we're going to be recording activity logs, but we're going to be adding in more education lessons in terms of teaching. I think I covered all the topics.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Zone 8.
Yeah, I'd like to mention what our district has done. I think it's pretty unique, and if other zones could do this. In our area, we partnered with Northwell early in their year to provide mental health services for our students and families. Of course, there was a fee with it, but in turn, during this pandemic, they've opened that resource up to our teachers and our faculty and our district employees. So once a week, those psychologists and mental health professionals provide a 1-hour session for whatever of those adults that need self-care. And they've also provided like resources for the adults because what we found is that a lot of our teachers who are teaching, working from home, taking care of their kids, they're overwhelmed. And it's really a great benefit. So if anyone has some neighboring hospitals or clinics that may be willing to offer help to their faculty and adults, I think it is really useful. It's been a real positive. We've been receiving great positive feedback from our adults in our district. So I just thought I'd throw that in as a tidbit for people.
Hey,
Thanks, Dave.
David.
I'm gonna be calling you because I'm part of that consortium also.
Yeah.
So I'll call you later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey,
You got it.
David, question. Did individuals pay for that, or did the district pay for the mental health services?
Yeah, this was a big group consortium with some of the local districts in our area. We paid a fee to buy into the consortium. We had a couple instances of losing students over the last year or so, and just leaving it up to our district mental health professionals, they were becoming overwhelmed. So we felt that our district fortunately has the resources that they were able to reach out and buy into this consortium, so that there's just more access for students and families. So our adults right now do not pay. It's a service that Northwell is providing for us.
Fantastic. What good to hear that. Zone 7. How about Zone 6?
Hey, I'll jump in. Jason Lembeck from Clarence. So as far as grades go, kind of very similar to Carol. We started out in the third quarter just letting them get by, and then we went back to a numbered system, which has kept the kids somewhat accountable. I've talked to other people that pass-fail, and they kind of like the fact that we went with a number because it does keep the kids on it a little bit more. No summer school. Budget, we've talked a lot about that. We had to prepare a reduction list depending on federal aid, and what our tax or what our vote does. I mean, we're looking at anywhere from $1 million to $5 million short. So we've had to provide everything from staffing to extracurriculars and all that. Still in the idea stage, but our superintendent wanted to be prepared. The biggest concern that we have right now is our mail-in vote. We typically get 3,000 people to come and vote, and now we're sending out 22,000 ballots, and a lot of people might be without jobs, and that's a concern. So we're putting full court press on just trying to get out to people, tell them to come vote, and, go to our heavy hitters in the community and try to appeal to them. We have started talking about return to school. We have an 8-page outline of all the topics and things that the superintendent provided us with that we're starting to look at every little nuance in the school community. For phys ed, we've been talking. We haven't made a plan, but we're brainstorming ideas like secondary level not changing for PE to keep them out of the locker room. Outside, obviously, in the fall, we have a better opportunity than a lot of classrooms do. Classrooms, 25 kids don't fit in a classroom 6 feet apart. And so we have that luxury. I think that a lot of people think about the potential contact and things that we do in phys ed, but we can work around that, but we're going to have space. We're talking about sanitation protocols, changing our unit plan structure from, all of our individual sports and archery and badminton, track work, fitness, stations where the kids can separate and do some kind of yoga or yoga, plyometrics, etc. We also talked about one-to-one computers, for our kids to do the cognitive piece. If every kid carried around a laptop, a Chromebook, or device, they wouldn't have to hand in pencil and paper, those types of things. I think the biggest thing that we're looking at too for next year is the reality that, if we go back, we may have to shut down again. And this time we're going to be better prepared from what we've learned from this time. But our superintendent wants us to really develop a better structure, a better plan, and take what we've learned through this experience and really develop, a cohesive plan for what that would look like. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. One of the questions that I had for the group too is just, field use in the summer. I've got 3 turf fields, which are all under lock and key, but, people are cutting the locks, they're hopping the fences. How hard do we push to keep that stuff kind of, something where we're not going to have huge gatherings. So I'd be curious if anybody has a solution. We're not, going to put somebody on patrol here all day long, but at what point do you, kind of let it happen? So that's it from Clarence.
Any comments on Jason's last question?
I do. My concern
We
is if we let it
unfortunately,
happen.
Section 8,
Our superintendent doesn't want the facilities open at all because she's afraid of students gathering, people gathering, and doesn't want anything coming back on the school district. So we're trying to lock it up and, if necessary, have security there as well.
Hey, Jay.
well, our Board of Ed decided that we were opening up the tennis courts following the governor, and it's been a train wreck. We do have security. I don't think they're doing anything, but we do have security. I have every goal and net away, so at least they're not coming to that. But we have herds of people on the field, and they're in groups, and they're certainly not wearing masks, and they're not social distancing. So they open the tracks and they open the tennis courts. And with the nice weather, it's been exactly everything you were afraid of. Yeah. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And Jason, down here on Long Island where I live a mile from the beach. The problem now is the beaches are now open out here and they're not open in New York State. So we have all kinds of people coming from New York City out to the beaches out here. And it's going to be crazy this weekend for Memorial Day weekend. So it's not only just the school properties, it's all the recreation that, really involves that decision making. And I know for our district, we closed the campus, including the track, but there is a political push to get the track open because taxpayers do feel the right to get onto the track and move. But again, we've decided to keep it closed up to this point just so we don't have to monitor it at all.
Yeah, Denise, we've had the same conversation in Amherst, especially with the budget vote coming up and it going out to thousands of taxpayers with locking down our stadium. That's a concern that our superintendent has, being in a very close-knit community here. So it's definitely a concern. Fortunately, we have some folks that are monitoring our stadium, I'll call it, on a daily basis, but obviously evenings and weekends are an issue.
And
We've had our track open the whole time, and we've had people using it appropriately, social distancing. So we've had no issues with that at all. But our fields have not been, well, they're open, but we haven't had any problem with anybody using them inappropriately.
I mean, I think the other thing,
from, go ahead, sorry.
No, the other thing is if we are going to loosen up, I think the next thing that happens with that, Jason, is now coaches are reaching out to you. Can we have open gym? Can we have, coaches and captains practices? So, I mean, I think what happens is if you don't strategically open things that aren't necessarily tied politically, I think there are some other things that come with it that people are anxious to get up and running again. So I think just like opening school, it has to have some type of plan so people follow those expectations and guidelines.
Good thought.
I will tell you by in section 11, at least in my school, we opened up the track from the beginning. We just felt like, community members wanted to practice social distancing. They should be able to do that on the track. People need to get outside. We've seen more people walking and jogging now than ever. And we did that from the beginning. But the beauty of it, we have a camera system and we get alerts. I get the alerts and other people get alerts when they feel like maybe people aren't doing the right thing. And it's been good. Knock on wood. We haven't had any issues. We absolutely do not allow our kids to go on the fields. They're not allowed on the turf field. Security knows that, and they kick them off because if you allow that, then we all know what's going to happen. You'll have 10, 15, 20 kids on the field, and there will be no social distancing going on. Tennis courts, I'm anxious to hear about everyone with tennis courts since the governor lifted that. We had the discussion yesterday. We did not open it up this week. We're kind of waiting to see what the other districts are going to do. Me personally, community uses our tennis courts a lot. I wouldn't have a problem with it as long as we monitored it like we do our tracks, like our 2 tracks.
So just in regards to tennis courts, USTA came out with recommendations how to do it safely. So we did open up our tennis courts. We also included those recommendations at the tennis courts for people to follow, whether they do or not.
Jana, do you have something? Jana? Oh, she can hear
Oh,
me.
sorry, I'm losing my my headset a little. No, I was just asking if there is anyone on here from Belmore Merrick out in Long Island, because I know that they've had their tracks open as well. Only know that because I run there, but they've had security and really haven't had any issues. You know, sometimes they'll have like parents go on to the field with like a couple of young children, and they do just immediately ask them to leave the field. But I'm interested because I know all of the other tracks that are close by here are closed. The tracks in the fields, Freeport, you know, Wantagh, Seaford, Massapequa, everywhere around here is closed. But the ones that are open seem to be okay.
Yeah, our issue is just that if you open the track, I mean, our track goes around our stadium field, you know, so if you open the track, then it just allows kids to come on, and we don't have the security. We have 2 SROs in the district that we kind of have swing by here and there, but, you know, after hours, contractually, nighttime, weekends, et cetera, you know, it's kind of moot. So that's the issue. If we open it up for the track, then we let people onto the fields, and we already have kids hopping fences, things like that. So it's challenging for sure, but thank everybody for all your feedback and thoughts on that.
But
Jane, I'm from Section 8. We're having problems because of density. It's the time of day, and Dave Villegas is right. I could see him on. The harbor has signs all over the place. I'm adjacent to him, and it's gotten so bad that the local government had to step in and put signs out and saying social distance. So it really kind of depends on the community and what's going on. But I'm hearing that one of my coaches was working out a Mepham's track, which is what the district you're talking about. But they didn't have as many problems. I think it depends on the community and the density of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Tom, it's nice to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm the old man in the, I guess, the room here.
I'm retiring this year.
I'm just going to reiterate what Murphy Hayes said, and I like her thoughts. Having a plan as you go forward for your fields, your track, and I understand the pain Jason's going through. Most of us can't afford to have security there. I mean, that's reality. I mean, we never had a victim. We were always kind of lacking in that department. So I think it's something that instead of just saying, oh my God, it's causing me agita every day, what can I do about it? What's the plan moving forward? Yeah. Okay, can I go to zone 5? Zone 5? Are we there? Hey, Jen. I think I'm losing my internet.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Chris, are you jumping on?
No,
Yeah, I can jump on, Brian. Everything that I've heard from the other zones, we're in the same boat. And right now the biggest challenge is the facilities. And Jason Lembeck knows our district well. But we don't even have SOR officers, whatever you call it, SROs. We did our stadium lighting last week to honor our spring senior athletes, and you know, I pull up an hour ahead of time to get ready, and there's 8 kids on the turf, and I know darn well as soon as I left at 9 o'clock that night, they were back on there. So that's a constant battle. We have signs all over the place. Our track is not attached to our stadium, but everything is closed. But we constantly have folks on our facilities. And then in terms of physical education, we are preparing for a couple scenarios. We come back to school as normal, or we don't come back to school at all and it's online, or we have some type of plethora of a mixed, and maybe bringing kids back once a week or twice a week. So we're just preparing for that, pretty slow and steady. Jason Lembeck talked a lot about social distancing and how you can even run a school that way. And that's something that we've talked a lot about extensively, keeping things clean. How do we do that? How are we going to handle staff that just don't feel safe to come to work or with compromised immune systems? And what do we do with families if the parents are saying, you know what, I'm not sending my kid. It's not safe. How to be sensitive to that. And obviously the mental health issue and what our students and adults have been going through, that is real and something we're constantly talking about as a district.
You know, one of the aspects you talked about, Fritz, is the cleaning and the expense that will be incurred from this, you know, I'll say daily, ongoing cleaning. I know at Victor, we were always frustrated with our custodial staff at night. How will they ensure that the facility is properly cleaned? That will be huge. That'll be huge.
Let me jump on the point that Fritz made with mental. And it's interesting, we've done this 3 or 4 weeks now, and we've talked more about mental health today than we had in any previous one, because obviously it's coming to the surface. In our district, our teachers could report this week. And what you're going to find if you've gone through this already is there's like a re-entry into the orbit for some folks to come into your building. So you got to have a plan, not just for your facility use, but you really as a director have to have a plan for how you're going to interact and welcome your staff back, because what we've done at HFL is we welcome them back this week. We're going to welcome students back to come in and pick up stuff the first week of June. We wanted our staff to re-enter first. And, you know, I shared with some of you, I was out in Indiana last week and went to a restaurant. And even though the restaurant was 50% capacity, there are very few people in it. Because there's going to be that step into the re-entering the orbit. And it's real for your staff. And we're seeing it this week with our staff.
Can I just jump on one topic, and that's the online learning, the online physical education. Ron, thanks for setting up those webinars with Aford and Colleen. That'll be really valuable. But I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm really having a tough time with Cuomo's statement and his partnering with the Gates Foundation. And I am concerned about phys ed. I don't care what anybody tells me. Nothing is going to be more powerful than that human connection between a teacher and a student in real time. Online is not going to replace that. And I am very, very nervous if somebody with a higher authority comes out and says, regardless of how our world turns in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, all phys ed will be online. I just find that unacceptable.
I think what you just said, we are all thinking, and I think there's not a person here who doesn't want face-to-face. And probably during this pandemic, the group that would shout the loudest probably would be parents that want their kids back in school and in front of a real teacher in real time. So I think that's important. And while this is the online webinars is a nice little tool, it's hopefully something that we have to use very little of as we go in the future. At Victor, sometimes we would have kids with mental health issues. We could use that online, or a kid who's injured, maybe the online. So my hopes is that, yes, while we're offering it, hopefully it will fade quickly in the past, but the thing that we know right now with everybody on this Zoom call, we just don't know the future right now. Okay.
I would agree with you, Fritz. But I think now this has kind of been an opportunity for everybody to kind of understand how important the social aspect of school in general is. And I would agree with you, Ron, like parents and kids, I think people just want to be around people and are looking forward to that. I talked to, somebody said earlier about how they talk to their staff more frequently now than ever before. And that's definitely the case for me. But this is an opportunity for us to really to take advantage of that, to reach out and make connections with kids. And that's kind of the message that I've been sending to our staff members, and they've embraced it. I go back to like the Google Classroom. We have 1-to-1, so all of our kids have devices. So we were in a pretty good position to go online once we left the building. Every one of our teachers has a Google Classroom. And one of the things, that we've kind of been working on moving forward to go back is kind of this idea of a hybrid classroom where maybe we're in class, maybe we're outside of school, but we're still going to have things prepared for kids. So we're using virtual classrooms. So kids can go to the virtual classroom, they can check in if they're there, they can complete assignments when they're in the building, or, they can, check off that they're doing things outside of school. So I think the virtual classroom and continuing to build on the Google Classroom is a way to be prepared for whatever happens next, whether that's, full-blown return to school or something other than that. I love the idea of the mental health programs, and I thought one of the things that we've talked about as a phys ed staff is kind of reorganizing our curriculum, where I love the idea of cooperative games early in the school year to kind of build relationships, but even incorporating mindfulness practices and the use of community circles into our program early. And I know that's not necessarily high activity, but when we get back to school, the mental and emotional health and well-being of our students has got to be, our first priority. So as a staff, that's kind of what we're trying to design for when we return. I love the idea about the addressing the needs of staff members too, because I tell you what, sitting in, I have these meetings with every department every week, and you sit there and you just watch the energy drain from their faces over the course of time, and it's just getting hard. So I agree that we need to find a way to, maybe in this area we can come up with some type of mental health consortium and share resources between districts. To go back to the track, our track is locked up. We're not allowing anybody access to any of our fields or our grounds. We're slowly starting to open up the tennis courts. We did have, over the weekend on one of our auxiliary fields, somebody brought a lawnmower in and mowed the infield of the baseball field so that they could pitch off of the mound. So we had to, that was crazy. We had to come up with a way to kind of restrict access to the mound and home plate, which I didn't think we would ever really need to do. But we haven't had much in terms of, people being on the stadium surface with it being locked up. I would like to see that kind of opened up and allow us to, allow the community access to the track.
Okay, anybody else? Zone 5? Can we go to zone 4? How about 3? 2?
There's a few of us for zone 4. I think we were just waiting to see who was going to go first.
Okay.
You got it, Murph.
Thanks. I think, we're different in different areas. Some of us are more rural school districts than others, even within our own zone. We are trying to move in physical education forward with our Google Classrooms and Zooming, and stay true to the content that we would be teaching now at home, but doing it safely and using the cognitive and affective side. Our social workers and our guidance counselors have been working hard with social emotional health, not only for the staff, but also for the students. We're really fortunate because we're in the Broome, Tioga, BOCES. I might have mentioned this last time, but Carrie Bullock, who's part of New York State AFERT's Board of Director, is our physical education and health educator at BOCES and hosts regular Zoom meetings once a week for health and physical educators to be able to collaborate, reflect, plan, and be forward thinkers and problem solvers in regards to not only current teaching, future teaching, and safety plans. So that's been a big help for our area. I think in regards to, we've been very fortunate that our community is respectful about facilities. And our district, we've been working with our safety officer, our SOR, and our safety committee for our return to school. I don't think they have a true vision yet, but I think it will be proactive in trying to blend what we're currently doing with what we could future do safely. We have had the access to the buildings. I work every day out of the building, and the teachers can come when they need to. They just have to sign in so that we can hygiene those areas. In regards to students, we believe that we're going to let them come in to get their belongings in a staggered way in the future. I don't think we have all those details worked out. One thing that's been hard for us, because we are very aid dependent, is that we've already determined budget cuts. We're $1.8 million in deficit. We will not be hiring anybody who's retired. Everything is through attrition. We're fortunate in the health and phys ed department that we will be able to keep everybody intact, but it has impact, our future programming, our future ability to have field trips, our ability to have extra services, partnerships with universities. It's going to impact my athletic budget in regards to equipment and supplies. And they're anticipating that the vote could possibly go down, and that we could have quarterly or mid-year cuts moving forward. So that's been hard for our community and hard for our staff, not only about not being together, but knowing that they're going to have to work harder with bigger class sizes next year. So that's one of the challenges of being a aid-dependent school district. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Zone 4.
I'm Kathy Haight at Southern Cuga, which is a pretty rural school. As I said, our facilities have been open and we've had no issues with people congregating. They basically use the track to run or walk, and they've been using the tennis court. Our grading, we do 6 marking periods. We finished our 5th marking period 2 weeks ago. That people could either pass or be exempt. During this 6th marking period, they have to get it done, and what we're gonna do is grade them on 5 marking periods out of the 6. So hopefully all the kids we've contacted all the kids that didn't hand in anything for the 5th marking period, didn't hand in their fitness logs, to not handing in English projects or math projects. So they've been contacting, their parents have been contacted, and they know that they need to do stuff during this 6 marking period. I started working with my PE staff. There's four PE and health teachers I have. We're gonna luckily be able to keep all 4 of those teachers. We've already started doing work for the fall on if we have to have, for the outside classes and what we're supposed to do when we come inside with that number of kids, and maybe different activities, which would keep them spread apart more. So we've already started working on that, and we're going to continue. I've got another meeting with them later this week. We probably haven't been working on the mental health strategies enough, because so much of that is done when they're in person with the kids. Although all my teachers have been contacting their kids. If they haven't gotten contact from the kids, they've made contact with them to make sure that they're all doing okay and moving forward. Budget is, I've had to cut a little for athletics for next year, but not a lot. Just some on supplies and new equipment, cutting back on a few non-league games. But I haven't been told I have to cut more than a few at this point. And luckily for my PE budget, we had already ordered equipment. So hopefully that whole budget's coming through with that. So it's not that bad for us right now. So our biggest focus is for the fall, and we really haven't, we've just started with that.
Thanks, Kath. Anybody else, Zone 4? Zone 3?
Hey, this is Rhonda from Oswego. Ron, I sent you 4 different emails. We're pretty much doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, but I took some initiative because I was worried about our faculty and staff, because in the very beginning of this, they kind of were off the grid. So for the past 5 weeks, what I do is I have an email that goes out to all district employees that's food service workers, everybody that's, working for our district. And I've created, I call it the WOW, which is the workout of the week, and then a challenge. So it comprises of 3 different things. It's an actual physical workout that do. That's the physical part of it. And then there's a social, and then there's an emotional part, a mental part of it as well. So each week I sent you all 5 weeks up to date. Next week will be week 6, but I usually do it on Sundays. The information that I've got, people don't have to do it, but people really appreciate the fact that I kind of challenge them in different ways, whether it's food, movement, different things that anybody could have access to without, obviously, you can't get to a gym, you can't get to different things. But I just, I think that for them to be able to be delivering good education or packing meals or taking care of themselves, that's first and foremost, because they're only going to be, if they're whole, then obviously that's going to make them a better educator even in this virtual world. So feel free to share those out with people. So far, people have liked them, and if they don't like them, they just don't have to do them. So it's an email based, and I do try to make it a little fun. Like the warm up this week for the physical part was, I did connected a YouTube video that your warm up was the dancing to the YMCA song, which was kind of fun for the village people. So I just try to be creative with it, but feel free to share that with faculty and staff or whomever you would want to do. So.
Ron, thank you. Fantastic. Wow, great idea. Anybody else? Zone 3. How about zone 2? And finally, zone 1. Anybody who hasn't?
I'll share, but what was the woman's name? I didn't get her name from Oswego. What was your name?
It's Rhonda.
Rhonda Bullard.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I love your idea. I just didn't get it. Hi, Tilsa Gonzalez. From New Rochelle. We have, I talked a little bit last time, but just we're in a very similar place as everyone else. The superintendent recently announced that she has created subcommittees that will be taking on the planning for reentry for next year. We will have summer school. What it's going to look like, that's still in the works. Basically, grading is, obviously the children received numeric grades for marking periods 1 and 2. Marking period 3, they received a pass, fail. And then for marking period 4, they have a choice. They can receive a pass, fail, and then for their final grade, if they wish to receive a numeric, then the parent basically just has to let any of their teachers know, and that PE is included in there. And the parent would say, I would prefer to have a numeric grade, and then the final grade gets converted from pass, fail into a numeric grade. As far as the budget, across the district, we are losing retirees. So retirees, those positions will not be filled. It has not been confirmed yet, but I have heard that at the high school they are losing 13 positions overall. We are losing 1 person for phys ed because we have a person that retired, so that we won't be replacing that teacher. And then we have an alternative school. So there was an issue with licensing at the alternative school. So I pushed really hard to make sure we didn't lose that position, because technically that person didn't retire. They were teaching out of license from a situation that happened a very, very long time ago. So I'm waiting to hear if the candidate that I pushed forward will be interviewed, and hopefully we will only be losing 1. If that other person is not hired, then we would be really losing 2 at the high school level. But I did have a conversation and let them know, obviously, that we already have most periods over 200 children in the gym and in the gym spaces, and we have to think about what happens when it rains and in the winter. I have begun speaking to my teachers and just brainstorming ideas for what's going to happen come September and what they think that they need. One of the things that I did was I reached out directly to our tech person. So she's in charge of technology and technology programs for the district, and I asked her to set aside specific professional development dates for physical education, because previously this was not something my teachers were well versed in, and in thinking about very much the conversations we're having here and what phys ed would look like online. Of course, I had the conversation with the teachers. We have to learn more about technology and put it together, because if something happens and it does go to virtual, you don't need 38 teachers for virtual PE. So I have started specific professional development specific for them, like how would you conduct a Zoom class, how would you do virtual learning, how do you do voiceovers, just simple things that they may not be familiar with. And we're also going to work on creating a bank of videos and putting together a couple of ideas, our fields. We do have a separate athletic director, so he oversees the field. But we'll see that we're in a very unique position because our school property is huge, like a small college campus. Part of our property is owned by the Parks and Recreation. So the Parks and Recreation, there's an area that is owned by Parks and Recreation. That area has remained open, and a few times I've been to the school, I have seen people walking on the, it's a path around the lake. There's a small lake on the property. And so other than that, it's been very quiet, and people have been respectful, and people have been going in and out of the building. So we do have security, not necessarily for the field, but just making sure that everything runs smoothly. I think I covered everything.
Thanks, thanks, Elsa. Anybody else? We're sort of closing at the end of this meeting. Anybody else would like to contribute? I have a final few words, then I'll turn to Brian.
Hey, Ron, I just have one quick question. I don't know if anybody is in the same boat as me, just throwing it out there, looking for a little help. I supervise the nurses across the district as well, including our private school nurses in Amherst. And I don't know if anybody on this video meeting also does the same, and maybe we can have a further conversation later on.
Yeah, I do. So we can get together.
Is that Garrett?
Yeah, and I know Tom.
David Garbarino, Section 4. I do the same thing.
I do as well, Section 4.
Tom Graham does, but I know he's retiring.
You guys mind putting your email in the chat, and I'll reach out?
Sure.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So just, I want to remind everybody that the webinars will be coming up in those 4 June dates. Obviously we'd love to have all directors, and all directors inform their teachers to be a part of the webinar. Obviously COA was a sponsor in bringing this to fruition. If you'd like to be part of a subgroup for a letter that would go to State Ed and our governor, you can send myself or Jana Moran an email, and I'm going to turn it over to Brian Donahue for some final comments.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody. I've really enjoyed seeing everybody the last couple of weeks. And, one of the silver linings is we have time to do this. So I would challenge all of us when this pandemic ends, and it will, that we continue to do this on different topics. This has been extremely helpful, and it's great to see faces across the state and know that we're all dealing with the same challenges. So I thank you, because this has really been a highlight for me each week to see all of you and to share ideas. So thank you very much.
Again, I want to echo thanks to every single participant. I think the sharing is helpful, and I think maybe it's more helpful than the content is the mental piece. Just we're all in this together, and we are going to move forward. And I think we're always going to do what's best with our students and our student athletes. Everybody have a fantastic day and stay safe.